how are you all? So first of all, I welcome you to this new video which is completely energetic, and we are going to learn a grammar topic, that is clauses, which is really very important, and it's quite difficult also to understand and to learn. But yeah, these concepts are so much not so much longer or not so much bigger than anything, but yeah, it's quite difficult to understand, difficult to learn, and difficult to identify those, right? So that's why you have to keep your mind clear and very clear and concentrated towards me while watching this video. Okay, so let's learn. So now let's go through the next slide, because now we are going to learn clauses and its types. So basically, what are clauses? So the smallest grammatical unit that can express a complete proposition. So it contains a subject and a verb. And there are two kinds of clauses. First is independent and second is dependent. So guys, what is a clause basically? So talking like that, so clause is nothing but it contains a subject and a verb. So it is a clause, right? Yeah, it also contains an object also. But a clause has a condition that there should be a subject and a verb. So it can so if these two conditions are fulfilled, then it is a clause. Then it is a clause, and then it will not demand you for another any condition. Okay, so these two conditions are really very needed, that is subject and a verb. Okay, so now there are two kinds of clauses. First is independent and second is dependent. So right after the meaning, we could understand what are independent clauses and what are dependent clauses, right? So basically, independent clauses, so it is a group of words that can stand on its own as a sentence, because it is it has a subject, it has a verb, and it is a complete thought. So what does it mean? So it just means that independent clauses are nothing but having a subject, having a verb, but it has its own complete sense, it has own its complete thought. So it just means that whenever you read that clause, you'll get a complete idea that what it means to tell. Okay, so it is nothing but the independent clause. So its example is like that they dance under the rain. Now this is a clause, they dance under the rain. Yeah, it gives you a complete sense. Yeah, that someone, some people, crowd of people, we can say a group of people, because we have used they there. So a group of people are dancing under the rain. They dance under the rain, right? The second example is, where is your sister? So yeah, it gives a complete thought. Where is your sister? Yeah, it's a complete thought, it gives a complete sense. It doesn't makes an incomplete thought, right? So it is an independent clause. Now let's learn about dependent clauses. So group of words that contains a subject and a verb. Conditions are fulfilled. Thus it is a clause, but it is dependent. Why? Because it doesn't give a complete thought. It doesn't give a complete sense. Because it is not a complete thought, a dependent clause cannot stand on its own as a sentence. So it is dependent, or it is being attached to an independent clause to form a sentence. So while learning all this, you have to always keep in mind that dependent clause will be always joined, always connected to an independent clause to make a sentence, to form a sentence, and to get a complete thought, to get a complete sense, right? So let's get some examples of that. So for the first example is like, because I woke up late this morning, right? So when you read that much, that because I woke up late this morning, so did you get a complete sense that what happened next, or what happened early, or what does it means? You don't have any idea, right? Then second example is like, when we arrived in class. Yeah, okay, you arrived in class, but then what occurred? So it again doesn't give any complete sense. Yeah, it has a sense, but it is incomplete. It doesn't give a complete sense, right? Then third, if my neighbor does not pay his rent on time. So you just give someone like that if my neighbor does not pay his rent on time, then I'll see him. Okay, so we just say something like that. So it's something like that example But yeah, okay, if your neighbor does not pay or did not pay his rent on time, then okay, but what will happen next? What will you do? So you don't get a complete sense again there, right? So it is again a dependent clause. Okay, you might have noticed that what is independent, what is dependent, it's just same as its mean. Just from that word you can get to recognize what is it. Okay, now dependent clause had some types. Independent clause did not get any types because it's just independent, so it never gets any types. Okay, so dependent clauses can be divided in some other clauses also, like adverb clauses are there, noun clauses are there, relative clauses are there, and participle clauses are also there. So now let's learn about those. So first is adverb clauses. Now a clause that functions as an adverb. Okay, so tell me first. So tell me that you just know the definition of an adverb, right? So what is an adverb? Yeah. So adverb gives information, extra information, or it describes about a verb, right? So adverb tells you that why it is, what it is, where it is, when it is, and what it happens in a sentence. It gives you a complete idea, right? So clause that functions as an adverb is an adverb clause. Now they are frequently movable within the sentence. Yeah, it's completely movable. It can give it can give variable ideas to variable sentences. Okay, you might got the correct idea I am saying. Okay, now example: when the timer rings, we know the cake is done. When the timer rings, we know the cake is done. So now can we say like something that we know the cake is done when the timer rings? We could say now. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. So now here the vein, what does this vein does? This vein nothing does but see here. So here the vein, yes, there is vein. Okay, so now this vein is conjunction. What is it? Conjunction. You know conjunction, it is a part of speech. So this conjunction is joining an independent clause and dependent clause, right? The independent clause is we know the cake is done, and the dependent clause is the timer rings. And this vein is a conjunction which is joining these two clauses, right? So now we know the cake is done when the timer rings. So here this vein, right? This when the timer rings, this clause, this complete clause gives you an idea about the activity of being a cake done, right? So in this way you can identify adverb clauses. Okay, so simply you have to notice that in any of the clauses, in any of the sentences where why, where, when, what, such words are used to describe or to act as a function of an adverb, so it is an adverb clause. Okay, so that's pretty easy. You don't need to be confused here. Okay, so now there are some more types of adverb clauses too. So first type is like place. So we know adverb of place, adverb of time, adverb of frequency, adverb of time, and etc. But now there are some more types like adverb of cause, adverb of purpose, adverb of concession, adverb of condition, right? So when there is place, so there must be a question like where. A question answered should be where. If time, so question answered should be when. If there is cause, so the question answered should be why. If there is purpose, so the question answered should be what was the reason for doing this. Then if there's concession, then why is this unexpected? It should be expected, right? Then if it is condition, then under what conditions, right? So these questions should be answered, right? So here some examples are given. So I don't think so there is need to tell all these things or explain all these examples. You can take a quick screenshot of this and you will come to know about all those things. Okay, so it's pretty easy, something like that. Okay, let's move on. So adverb clauses are always introduced by a subordinating conjunction, right? So now, subordinating conjunction. So these kind of clause are of just two types. First is time and second is cause and effect, right? So these common conjunctions are given there, like after, before, when, while, as soon as, since, until, by the time, once, as, whenever, every time, the first time, the last time, the next time, right? And for cause and effect there is because, now that, since, etc. That much. Now if there is a kind of clause time, that what functions it does. So the function is like, they are used to say when something happens, or it is used by referring to a period of time or to another event. That much. Okay. Now if the kind of clause is like cause and effect, then it indicates the reason, means because now, or I mean present, future, past, etc. And it used to mean because. Just that's it. That's it. Okay. Now some more is there. Kind of clause. In kind of clause, contrast, direct contrast, and condition. Now in contrast, even though, although, though. In direct contrast, while, whereas. And in condition, if or unless or only if or even if, right? Or also whether or not is also in there. Okay. So the functions are given, like you have contrast is used for unexpected results. Direct contrast is for are used to show direct contrasts with no difference of meaning, and for condition are used to talk about a possible situation and its consequences, right? Okay. Now let's move to noun clause. So we know that this is the lecture 1, right? We all know that. So because it is the lecture 1, we are just up to here. And the noun clause, relative clause, and the last one, what is it? You might all know it is the, just that's it, noun clause and relative clause. So we will learn it in the next lecture. So what we today learn, we learn what are clauses, what are the types of clauses like dependent and independent. Then what are the what are the types of dependent clause. In that we learn about the clause of adverb clause, and in that we learn all those types of that clauses of adverbs, right? So here we ended now. Thank you so much. Bye everyone.